Hi. Slowly waking up here in Pacific time zone. It's just at the top of the hour, so I'm going to give things just a minute or two for a few more people to join. We'll probably have a relatively short meeting today. Well, I guess we're 2 minutes past. Oh, there's one more person coming. I'm guessing that's actually Hannes. Oh, it's Maria. Aha.
Very close guess though. The video. Here we go.
It's so tricky since you all pair, always guessing who
It's
might be
hard to do this,
who's logged onto
actually.
the computer. Yeah. And we've got Kenny as well. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. We'll probably have a relatively short meeting today. We had a short meeting yesterday, and that fits with where we are in the cycle. So a couple of updates. Last week we hit feature freeze, and amazingly we are up to, well, unless it's changed again today, we are up to 66 features that have been captured by the feature definition process. That's a big number. I'm slightly skeptical looking at some of them, whether all of them are going to get through. And this is actually normal. We get a big chunk of things that come in, and some of them fall away. And there's kind of a set of things that bounce from release to release, and eventually things come to completion. But as a community, we're ambitious. I think that's a good thing. We're trying to achieve a lot, and we'll see which of these come to fruition. But something else that came up in the call yesterday, we had Aaron Krickenberger on, and he was asking if we looked at that relative to prior releases. And I hadn't gone and looked specifically at dev stats, but anecdotally felt like it was high. But something that he called out was looking at dev stats that this quarter has probably been historically an active one. So depending on where we are in the calendar year, people have different things going on between whether it's work and life, product releases at work, things like that, or holidays, conferences, stuff like that. Somehow this quarter seems to be one where people are actively productive. So we'll see. We may actually have a lot that happens in this quarter. Looking at that list of features, there's a number that look slightly worrying to me, just in terms of like, okay, if this happens, this is a fairly big deal. So that could bring some risk to us later in the cycle. But again, we'll kind of see. I'd encourage folks, even beyond obviously just the features lead and shadows are looking at the features, and I am as well at this point. But I'd encourage other folks to glance over that spreadsheet, kind of look at least the names of the features and SIGs, just to have them in your head a bit if and when things come up later in the cycle. And if you've got time to kind of glance over maybe a little bit more of the feature, as the cycle progresses, one of the things that will really happen is, as a team, the way we manage risk is kind of collectively worrying and wondering out loud. So if there's a particular feature foo, and for whatever reason it hasn't come up, but you've noticed something about foo lately, that's exactly what we want you to bring up in the meeting, to say, hey, I'm wondering about this. We haven't talked about it, but I saw a little something on it this week. So having a little bit of context about that list, and obviously 66 is daunting. It might take a bit to go and familiarize a bit with some of that context, but I'd encourage you to kind of nibble away at that list over the next couple of weeks and get a little bit of that context in. Three of those features are listed as exceptions, and need to work through specifically what that means and whether we accept them or what. And one is listed as at risk, and it's an ambitious one as well, so we will see about it. Yesterday we talked about what I'll call the blog post. In prior releases, around this time after feature freeze, the communications team started working up a blog post to describe what features might be coming. And this was actually a miss on my part. It had come up last release that we weren't going to do this going forward, but it didn't get removed from the schedule. So we sort of do a copy paste of the prior schedule, and we don't always do edits of the old schedule live as we remove things. So that one hadn't gotten explicitly removed. I carried it forward. So we're not going to do that formally, but then there was some discussion about whether individuals amongst us might want to sort of informally, on whatever platforms we have, start talking about what we see. And the balance here is that if the official communications team puts out a blog post and say, here are the features for 112, then people expect that. And in an open source community and agile development, that's not how things work. We don't know at the end of September what's actually going to be done yet. So then the communications team has to sort of backtrack on things, and if there's press out there who's kind of incorrectly latched onto things that they believe are conclusively happening and kind of advertising those or messaging those, it leads to confusion. But in terms of informal blogging and things like that, Nick Chase, who handles the release notes, he was looking at doing a little bit of a blog post on what he's seeing, and it would make sense for that potentially to bubble up into something like the Last Week in Kubernetes blog roll. So these are kind of informal community things that keep a pulse on what's going on, and have a readership too, where I think people understand a little more that this is open source development and we're just talking about what we're seeing today. It's not guaranteed for end of September. So I'd encourage others, if you're thinking about that, or if you do blogging or tweeting or social media, to feel free to talk about what you're seeing. It's good to give visibility to that in an informal way. Carrie, I don't know if there's anything you want to add on that front. Okay. So next on our standing agenda then would be bugs. Gwen is on vacation, and Arnaud gave us an update. I don't know if you want to say anything again today, Arnaud?
Not really, because there's not really big change between yesterday and today.
Yep.
Just one issue closed.
Oh, one did close. Okay.
Yeah, and this issue is related to the CI. So I think everything is good for the moment.
Okay. And that was the general message yesterday that Arnaud gave us. I think we've got a pretty small issue count and relatively quiet increasingly on CI signal as well. Compared to a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, CI signal's cleaned up quite a bit on master blocking. We still have some upgrade tests that are an issue. Just glancing at our attendance, we don't have CI coverage. So really that's all there is to say, probably, that master blocking has stabilized. I think yesterday there was one issue remaining, but Mohammed's gotten some traction for the most part there. Master blocking still has one issue, and master upgrade has a kind of a actually master upgrade maybe has one less than yesterday, but we've had a couple of things that have been failing for about 2 weeks, which is a little troubling. So I may go and start poking on people a little more on that particular one. So I just was thinking, I pulled up TestGrid and glanced at it really quick. Has anybody else glanced at TestGrid since the demo last week, or given it a try, looking to assess the status of things, besides obviously potentially our node?
Not really. I don't have the time this week because I'm very busy at work.
Okay.
So maybe the weekend I will try.
On the plus side, it's mostly passing tests. It's potentially more interesting to look when there's a bunch of failures and you have things to actually go tunnel into, but I'd happily avoid that case. If we don't have it show up, that's a good thing. Okay, so that hits the main three areas, features, bugs, and CI, and a bit about documentation communications as well. There were a couple of kind of miscellanea that came up yesterday. So last week in the SIG release meeting, we had a discussion about turning off the milestone munger. And what the milestone munger is, it's one of a number of bots that kind of sit and scrape activity on GitHub, try to understand where there might be issues that need attention. And the milestone munger specifically looks for things that have been labeled as part of the milestone, so in this case 1.12. And at the same time, they haven't maybe been updated recently, or they don't have certain labels. And the frequency or the specific labels kind of varies or varied slightly during the cycle. Right at first, you could just say, we're aiming to have something in release 1.12, and maybe that's okay because it's early in the cycle. But then as we progress through feature freeze, a SIG should have looked at it, should be and also, so there's kind of an overlap of features and issues here, and potentially PRs, but they're not quite treated the same. So we get this ambiguity. What are required, and how much nagging do we do? And what we decided in the SIG release discussion, and this had been discussed on and off in previous release retrospectives, we just don't feel like we're getting value from this, and it's one of the reasons that people, whether on the release team or across the project, get tons and tons of emails from GitHub automated. That leads to low quality or low signal to noise ratio. People start filtering out emails, and then it's no longer effective to have a robot reminding people to do things because they never see the reminder. So what we've decided is that on the release team, we hadn't seen a whole lot of value in that mostly what we saw in terms of getting updates to issues or features or PRs in terms of status and labeling and clarity was coming by us as individuals reaching out to people. When we notice through whether the CI signal or features team or the bug triage that we need more information, having a human reach out to the individual, whether on Slack or pinging them on GitHub, but doing that not in an automated way, not every 24 hours, it gave a lot better results. So last week, the milestone munger was turned off on Friday. And it's kind of funny because since Aaron had attended the meeting, I was going to ask him, like, hey, did the milestone munger get turned off? And I hadn't even noticed because I don't see the emails, probably the same reason nobody else sees the emails. So we're all curious to see how this goes. It's a risk that maybe the bot was actually helping something and we have issues or things that languished, right? I mean, we don't know for sure. So I'd encourage folks to keep an eye on things, and if you feel like somehow you get the sense somehow that we're kind of losing control or we're not noticing things, or we keep getting surprises, speak up, share that worry or anxiety, and we'll revisit this. This is effectively an experiment for the next month or so, and especially as we get closer to the release, if it seems like somehow we're realizing with hindsight that we dropped the ball, we'll want to look at this again. And it may be that automation is helpful here, but we need to change the way we do automation. So we've swung from really aggressive nagging automation to none. So we'll reevaluate how we do on that. The other thing that Aaron mentioned is that the 1.8 test automation has been turned down, so or turned off. The community supports 3 prior releases, and part of that is having test automation to notice if things have broken there. And 1.8 is past its point of support. And this has happened informally in the past, so I think we talked about this last week, that we needed to formalize this, and so he's put out a PR, I'm not sure this morning if it's merged, but put out a PR to update the schedule to have a formal point about a month in that's turned down 3 releases ago's test automation. So that saves the project money, saves on test infrastructure automation, things like that, and it's just one less thing to have people looking at, or confusion from a user standpoint, like is 1.8 still supported? I see test results. So with that, we similarly to this, we're 15 minutes past. We had a pretty quick run through of things yesterday, and then we had kind of maybe 10 or 15 minutes of general discussion around these same points. So I'll open it up to y'all. Anything that you'd like to comment on? Any questions? Any observations for the week? All right. So then the only other thing is, do we keep having this Tuesday meeting? And my vote would be yes. And I'm curious what you all think. I feel like we're getting 2 sets of people on the 2 meetings, and that the times are more convenient for people in a disjoint way. And it's fairly easy for me to do the 2. And what do you all think?
I like it. The other one conflicts with some meetings I have at work, so.
So I know Arnaud and Maria, you're in Europe, and I'm guessing this time is better for you.
For me, Thursday is not really a good day because it's conflict with the office, but I can arrange with my boss to say I will just attend the Monday meetings and everything is fine for me.
Okay.
I think Monday is fine for me for the moment.
Okay.
So.
For me, Tuesday is slightly better, at least for consistency.
Mm-hmm. And Yang, yeah, coming from China this time is definitely better than the other, I would assume. Okay. So we have a yes
I'm
there.
not picky on day. It's just early morning is easiest for me,
Mm-hmm.
because the rest of my team is West Coast, so all my meetings are at that gap.
Okay. So we'd originally kind of said this would be an experiment. We'd do it for a couple of weeks. So this was the last meeting on the calendar formally, but I'm going to go ahead and extend it just through the rest of the 112 cycle. I'm finding it useful, and I like that we're getting more activity. So, all right. Well, if nobody has anything else, I think we'll end it very early today. I would say our next couple of meetings are likely to be modestly short as well, before things really start to ramp up in September. Keep an eye out for activity on GitHub and issues and discussion and things, and familiarize yourself a bit with the features, and we'll see where they all head over the next month. All right. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Tim.
Bye.